Hello ħabibtiegħi, kif inti? Jien jissimni Myron. Hello my friend, how are you doing? My name is Myron, and welcome to part 1 of this Maltese language lesson series, which is all about the Maltese verbs. In today's video specifically, I will be taking you through some extremely important grammatical terms and rules that you're going to be hearing me use across the entire series, making this lesson arguably the most important to pay attention to and get to grips with. Then, as the series continues throughout the next few weeks, I will dedicate an entire video teaching you how to conjugate regular Maltese verbs into the past tense. After that, I'm going to make a video specifically for conjugating regular verbs into the present and future tenses. And then in some additional lessons, we'll take a look at even more regular verbs, some irregular verbs, and some really important verbs such as the verbs to be and to have. So yeah, I really hope that this format of me breaking everything up into individual lessons will make things much less overwhelming for you to learn, as yeah, this verbs topic is indeed quite a huge one. But yeah, all in all, this topic has been requested quite a few times by a few of you, and you know, I'm a believer in giving the people what they want. So yeah, without further ado, let's begin. And we're going to do that by taking a look at the verbs to write, to dress, and to think, which all follow the regular patterns of verb conjugations, making them a really nice one to start off with and learn from. And actually, for the first 3 lessons of this series, I most probably will be sticking with these 3 verbs only. So yeah, you'd better get used to them, and you'll also notice how one of these verbs is in my top 50 most popular Maltese words ebook, which you can get from the link in the description below right now for free. Now, let's go through the grammatical terms, which you'll be able to see on this screen right now. And as you can see, I've put the English translations in black and Maltese translations in red, like I always do in my videos. So we have il verb, which of course just means the verb. We have l'infinitif, which means the infinitive, l'imperatif, the imperative, and the għerq, which basically just means the root consonants. Now, as I mentioned, these grammatical terms are without a shadow of a doubt the most important part of learning verbs in Maltese, as once you master them, you'll pretty much be able to conjugate 90% of regular Maltese verbs in all tenses. So let's start with the infinitive, which in Maltese doesn't actually exist like it does in other European languages, because instead we have something that we call the mamma, or the mother, or stem in English if you like. And from this point onwards, this is how it will be referenced. We won't be using the term infinitive, because although this mamma is equivalent to the infinitive, it is not identical. Having said that, the mamma is the dictionary form of the verb, meaning that if you wanted to search for a particular verb in the dictionary, this is the version of it that you will need to search for. The mamma version of it. And don't worry, because in a moment I will explain to you how you can easily work out the mamma every single time, as there are quite a few different ways that you can get it. But for now, I'm just going to tell you what the mammas are for the 3 verbs to write, to dress, and to think on the screen here. So let's take a look. We have kieteb for to write, liebes for to dress, and ħaseb for to think. That's kiteb, liebes, and ħaseb. Now, something really important about the mamma that I want you to be aware of now is that the mamma is literally always identical to the verb conjugation for what he did in the past tense. And I'll explain more about this throughout the next few lessons, and more specifically in part 2 of this series, which will indeed be the next episode, if you will. But for now, the next thing I want to talk about is the imperative, which in Maltese we say l'imperativ. And essentially, if you're not sure what the imperative is, it is just the command version of the verb. So instead of just saying to write or to dress or I write or they dress, you are commanding someone to do the verb. Okay, so it's write, you there, write the paragraph now, okay? Or it's think, come on, think, we have to do this now, think, please. Or dress yourself, we need to leave in 10 minutes, dress. They're commands. Do you see what I'm saying? They're command versions of the verb. And perhaps you're thinking, well, why is this important? Why is knowing the imperative so important? And the reason is because knowing it will seriously help you to conjugate the verbs for all pronouns in both the present and future tense. Not so much the past tense though. But anyway, with all that in mind, let me show you what the imperative looks like in English for each of these verbs, as I think that will make things much easier for you to understand. So yeah, let's take a look. We have write with an exclamation mark, as it's a command, of course. We have dress, also with an exclamation mark, and think. And remember, I said the imperatives are the versions of the verb that are used when enforcing a command. And that's why I've put the exclamation marks at the end of them, just to help illustrate that. But yeah, just so you know, that isn't actually a part of the word. It's just simply for illustrational purposes, to remind you that this is indeed the imperative. Okay, now that you know the English versions of the imperative for these verbs, let's replace them with the Maltese versions. And before I do that, I just want you to know that there is both a singular and plural version for each imperative in Maltese. So we have ikteb, ilbes, and aħseb. That's ikteb, ilbes, and aħseb. And these are all the ways in which you can command someone, in other words, one person, to perform the verb that you are talking about. So if you say ikteb, eyya ikteb, it means come on, you, write, come on. If you say this, you are commanding one person to write. In other words, what you are seeing on the screen right now in red is the singular imperative. However, what if you wanted to command multiple people to write? Well, for that, you would need to know or work out the plural imperative. And how do you do that? Well, in most cases, you can just add the Maltese letter U on the end of the singular imperative like this. So it becomes iktebu, ilbesu, and aħsebu. But wait, that is indeed just the first step, because after adding the U, you then need to eat the nearest vowel to the U that you've just added, which in all cases for these three examples is the E. So let me just remove these for you very quickly. And there we have it. These right here are the plural imperatives for each verb. So we have iktebu, ilbsu, and aħsbu. That's iktbu, ilbsu, and aħsbu. And this is the word that you should use when you want to command multiple people at the same time to perform the particular verb. I hope that makes sense. What I'll do now is I'll just add the singular imperative versions back on here as well now, so that you can see them both on the screen together. Okay, there you go. So you have ikteb, iktebu, ilbes, ilbsu, aħseb, aħsbu. And by the way, something you may or may not have noticed are the similarities in appearance between the mamma and the singular imperative. Because essentially, for the majority of mamma verbs, it is just a case of swapping the first two letters around to work out the imperative, and of course, vice versa. I mean, look, if you swap the first two letters of kieteb around right here, you will literally end up with ikteb, which is of course the singular imperative, and you can see that down here. And the same thing works with the other two verbs here. Libes would change to ilbes, and aħseb would change to aħseb. Now, the last grammatical term that I really want to talk to you about is the għerq. which is an extremely important part of learning Maltese verbs, as it is, in simple terms, the root consonants of a verb, which is why I've also written root consonants right here. And don't worry, I will also explain to you how you can work this out as well in a second. But for now, let me just show you what the għerq is for each of these three verbs. So, for the verb to write, we have k, t, b. For to dress, we have l, b, s. And for to think, we have h, s, b. And if you're wondering where I got all of these letters from, all you need to know is that if you know the mumma, knowing the għerq is actually really easy, because all I did was take all the vowels out of the mumma, which literally left me with three root consonants. See, if you take out the e and the e from kieteb here, you are literally left with k, t, and b, which is indeed the għerq. The same thing happens right here. If you take out the e and e from liebes, you are literally left with l, b, s, which is indeed, once again, the għerq. And lastly, taking out the a and e from chaseb leaves you with ch, s, b, which once again is, of course, the għerq. Now, if you're wondering why this is important to know, or why you should even bother working out the għerq, it is because every single verb conjugation in every single tense for regular verbs like these three follows the same corresponding għerq in the same consistent order. So, for example, whenever you see a Maltese word that has k, t, b, like this in the exact same order, the chances are that it is a verb that has something to do with writing, because of course we are literally talking about the verb to write here. The only thing that changes and will look different are the vowels, and you'll see many more examples of what I mean by this in my upcoming verb videos. But yeah, even if we look at the imperatives for to write here, just look at the root consonants. They are k, t, b, and k, t, b. And I mean, look, even the word for book is ktip. Isn't that interesting? So this is what I mean when I say that when you see the għerq, k, t, b, like this in this exact same order, the chances are that it is a word that has something to do with writing. Because, of course, removing the vowels from ktip right here literally leaves us with k, t, b. And this entire exact same pattern happens for the verb to dress, which is liebes right here, where any word that contains these root consonants in this exact same order is pretty much guaranteed to be something to do with getting dressed. Look, l, b, s, l, b, s. And once again, the same thing happens with the għerq for to think. We have h, s, and b, and h, s, b, which of course matches the għerq, h, s, b down here. And if I just go back to this example kieteb right here, let me invent a word real quick. Let's say we have kbit, which is a completely made up word, by the way. It doesn't exist. But if it did exist, we would know that for absolute certain it has nothing to do with the verb kieteb, even though it looks really similar. And why is that? Well, it's because of the għerq. The order of these consonants in this word do not follow the exact same order as the għerq from the mumma. Okay? Look, the għerq from the mumma is k, t, b, but this fake word here is k, b, t. So it would be impossible for this word to be related to the verb to write. Now, hopefully, that makes sense, because all of that we have just been through, my friend, is 85% of everything that you need to know in terms of grammatical rules regarding the verbs. And the fact that you now know all of this will make things so much easier for you when conjugating verbs in the different tenses, which indeed is what we are going to look at in the next few lessons over the next few weeks. But before this video ends, I just want to tell you 4 really small yet important things. Number 1, remember, for every single verb, the mumma is also the verb conjugation for what he did in the past tense. In other words, kieteb right here means he wrote. Liebes here means he dressed. And chaseb right here means he thought. And as I said, I'll dive more into that in the next lesson. The second thing I want to say is just a quick reminder, and that is that everything I have taught you so far in the video regarding these conjugation rules and grammatical rules happen with the majority of verbs, which of course is fantastic, but that also means there are indeed a few outliers, which I will go over in a future video. The third thing is that if you've been struggling a little bit with all of these verb rules in today's video, you are absolutely not alone. In fact, it's very normal to, feel frustrated or perhaps think that learning Maltese verbs is just too confusing. But I promise you, as you keep practicing, things will start to click. I mean, literally, I had a student recently who was in exactly the same place. He was struggling to make sense of everything, pretty much. But he found that with clear explanations and with plenty of practice exercises, which is exactly what I provide in my online Maltese language course, he not only got more confident using verbs in conversation, but he actually learned them faster and more thoroughly than from just watching my YouTube videos. So if you want that kind of guidance and support to help you learn Maltese verbs and much more at your own pace, my online course could be just what you need. And you can access that from the link in the description below. And the final point I want to make is that in the next lesson, we will be looking at how we conjugate verbs into the past tense. In fact, here is a small sneak peek. Trust me, it's going to be interesting, and I can assure you, you won't want to miss it. Grazie ħafna u narak dal-waqt.